on a mission.
I've learned some things today which have just blown my mind in the sense of what I need to be for my fellow human being that I didn't know about. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't know about that. I need to help this situation. But if you don't know about things, you know, what can you do? It's a big story, isn't it? And everybody is going a journey. But something that really came to me this week, and I'm going to read it to you if that's all right. Cancel. Hopefully see the print on my little phone. It was this, a pearl of wisdom here. 2 travelling monks reached a shallow river where they met a young woman. Wary of the current, she asked if they could carry her across. One of the monks hesitated, but the other quickly picked her up on his back, transported her across the water, and put her down on the other side. She was very grateful and thanked them and departed. And as the monks continued on their way, the one was brooding and preoccupied, unable to hold his silence. He spoke out. "Brother, our spiritual training teaches us to avoid any contact with women. But you picked that one up on your shoulders and carried her across the river." Am I reading it well? Are you getting the story? Okay. The other guy said, the other monk, he said, "Brother, I set her down on the other side while you are still carrying her." Have you got it? Have you got it yet? So basically, he was concerned about all the religious jargon that should suggest that he shouldn't have carried the woman. He carried her across, put her down, went on his way, the matter was done. But the guy who didn't carry her across was still carrying her. Have you got it? Now you might think, what on earth is that to do with anything? Listen, I've learned just to do what I feel in my heart is the right thing to do. And I felt that I was supposed to read this tonight. There are times when all of us are doing things where somebody else might say, "Hey, what are you doing?" Thank you. It's lovely to have you back. It's great to have you back on that front row, darling. It's great. People will say, "What are you doing?" And we'll say, "Hang on a minute. What I did, I set that down ages ago and I'm on my way, but you're still carrying it." And I think that that's a big lesson to learn for us at Q. There are many things that happen and we have left it behind, but some are still carrying it. And I don't know, I've just got to leave that with you tonight. Some of the things that we've said over these last few weeks, over Easter and various things, some are still carrying it where we set it down and we've moved on. We believe that the whole journey of our faith is one of trust, not one of a list of do's and don'ts and things that we have to, make sure that we do. It's about, okay, let's do what's in our heart and then let's leave it behind. Does that make sense? So I did that as a very, filling moment. Guys, are you ready? And we'll take it away. Which means then that we won't do a welcome later on. We'll just do the couple of songs. Don't leave me having to say something else. But we're really glad to see you. Honestly, it's great to see you all. There is so much that's happening in all of our lives. And I absolutely believe in enlightenment. I believe in spiritual growth. I believe that we shouldn't be the same today as we were last Sunday. Come on. We ought to be thinking, what have I learned this week that's taken me on to a different understanding and a different way of being the Christ in the earth? Do we believe that? I have learned it more and more, and it's taken a long time. But what I understand now, that it's not about attending a meeting, but it's about basically being Christ in the earth. So are we ready to go, guys? I'm sorry to hold you up, but welcome everybody, and then we'll get going. Listen to what's on this week, and then we'll get cracking. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, QChurch, and welcome to our house. This afternoon, we continue our quest together, exploring what love, life, and faith look like for each of us in the 21st century. This afternoon's get-together is just one of the events running at Q. You can find out what else is going on at qyork.co.uk and select what's on. Now, this afternoon, the kids will have an extra 30 minutes in Life Zone from 4:30 until 5:30, having a load of fun and games with the Life Zone team, whilst Anth shares some great thoughts with all of us in here. Our Wednesday evening QChurch get-togethers are called IQ because they're all about having an opportunity to focus on how you and I can develop an intelligent personal journey of faith. This week, we'll be continuing our theme of going beyond Jesus. Doors open at 7:15 p.m. for a 7:30 start. Entry is free and everyone's welcome. If you're a guest with us this afternoon, then it is great to have you with us. If you'd like to stay in touch with what's going on here at QChurch, then you can subscribe to our free text messages by simply texting your full name to 07852 622 101. You'll also find a Welcome to Our House card on the pew in front of you, which you can fill in and hand to a steward. Here at QChurch, we believe that we are on a quest to be an ice-breaking community that can equip and support others on a pioneering path of genuine faith. If you'd like to be part of supporting the QChurch vision financially, then you can make a donation online. Just go to qyork.co.uk and click Donate, where you can give a one-off gift or set up a regular donation. If you'd like to give a cash or cheque gift this afternoon and you are a UK taxpayer, then please use the black and white envelopes in front of you. If you're not a UK taxpayer, then there's no need to use an envelope. Simply pop your gift in the basket as we take our Pay It Forward collection later on this afternoon. There will be drinks and snacks available in the foyer from about 5 o'clock this afternoon, and we'll have half an hour to relax and chat before collecting our kids from Life Zone and our cars from the car park at 5:30. But first, the next hour of our lives could be the springboard for our future. So prepare to be inspired as we continue our quest together.
Everybody draws their very first breath with your name upon their lips. Okay, just a couple of things for a minute. First of all, any of you that are not familiar with the story behind that song that was written, it's because in the old Hebrew language, they wrote the name of God as YWYH, which although we say Yahweh, and of course, you know, the Greek derivative, we made that Jehovah, actually, those consonants are not speakable. They don't have any vowels. It's not a word that you can speak. And what is interesting is that when those words are spoken, it actually makes the sound of breathing. The breathe in and the breathe out is the YHWH. Hence that song that every child's first breath when it breathes, it is breathing, uttering the name of God. And every person in their last breath utters and breathes the name of God, which puts such an expansive mystery on all of this, which goes way beyond some of the things I was ever taught about God, who was actually a bit picky and a bit separate, rather than very loving and very present. And because of that, we just want to pray tonight. Jean Potter is a very precious part of this family, so loved and appreciated. Jean's grandson, who is a pastor down in Rugby, he's very, very seriously ill with cancer. He's been battling this thing for some time, got a young family, and yet, you know, stepping up to the plate, which I've met so many people who do that, who in the ministry is more than a job, and step up because you feel with everything within you, you need to bring out what is happening on the inside. So Jean's grandson, we're going to pray for him. Simon is his name. It's a difficult one in the sense that what do you pray? How do you pray? Why do you pray? And having dealt with some very emotionally and psychologically difficult situations over the last couple of years, particularly in the context of parents losing their children, I have a couple of things. It's raised many questions in me, and also what it's done is made me very angry at the platitudes that people throw out to the suffering in these times. Now, a lot of our Christian background in the UK comes from the ancient Celts. They really were the ones to embrace the Christian message in this country, and so we get a lot of our developed foundational thinking from Celtic spirituality. And one thing the Celts used to talk about was thin places. So they tended to build their churches and monasteries where they felt there was a thin place, like the island of Iona they felt was a thin place. What they used to say was that the distance between heaven and earth is not very big. They said it was about a yard or a meter, but in some places it's much thinner. Now, what they were wrestling with is the mystery of a present manifestation of the divine that when it touches earth, brings all of heaven's benefit into earth's time. So things like healing and provision, things like when we're wrestling with cancers and suffering and sick children and all of those things, what they were really saying is, we know that there is a mystery. Now you could say, well, you know, can we be guaranteed, can we assure that if we pray something will happen? No, I can't in the sense of a healing, but what I can be sure of is there is a mystery. And if there is a mystery because there's a thin place, there can be. And I'm one who stands before you because as a small child in Pontefract Infirmary, I was given up for dead. I was literally given just hours to live. I was dying. I was on my last legs. My parents' pastor came and prayed for me in the oxygen tent that I was as a child. And an hour later, I was feeding and improving, and I was out of hospital in 3 days, having been condemned to death from the condition that I had. So the good news is there are thin places. The good news is there is a mystery that says all things are possible. And so we're going to pray from that basis, if that's okay. That the God who, we don't understand everything, but why not? Why shouldn't there be a miracle? And can we be part of the process that says we believe that there is a mystery in this, and we embrace that and we accept that, and we can't explain it, but it would be nice if. Is that okay? So just stand with me. Let's just pray. Father, we pray for Simon tonight. And we don't pretend to have any platitudes. We could use lots of clever words, and I could appear to be praying a fantastic prayer to my own credit. But all I say is, Jesus, we need your help right now. In fact, we need to go beyond just the manifested Jesus. We need the expression of the Christ who is in us, the hope of glory. So I pray for a manifestation right now for Simon. I pray that in his situation, we just throw ourselves on you, the divine, the creator, and ask you right now that in the midst of the peace, in the midst of all that is going on, that there will be an absolute sense of the presence of the Christ, the risen Christ, the one who makes all things well. We thank you that our promise goes beyond this life, but we just pray right now that in this life, in the time that is here, that we will see heaven touch earth in a wonderful way, and we'll give you the honor because we can't do it, but we believe there's something that flows to us that can do something that we can't do. So we're asking today that we will see something of that manifested. In Jesus' name, amen.
In the vapor of your breath, the planets fall. If the stars were meant to worship so alive, I can see your heart in everything you made. Every burning star, a signal fire of grace. If creation sings your praises so alive, God of your promise, you don't speak in vain, no syllable empty your voice. So once you have spoken, all nature and science follow the sound of your voice. And as you speak, 100 billion creatures catch your breath, evolving in pursuit of what you said. If it all reveals your nature so alive, I can see your heart in everything you say. Every painted sky, a canvas of your grace. If creation still obeys you so alive. If the stars were meant to worship And as you speak, 100 billion failures disappear. When you lost your life, so I could find it here. If you left the grave behind you so alive, I can see your heart in everything you've done. Every part designed in a work of all blood. If you gladly chose surrender so alive, I can see your heart a billion different ways. Every precious one, the child you died to save. If you gave your life to love them so alive, like you would again 100 billion times. But what measure could amount to your desires? You're the one who never leaves the one behind.
Hi. So, I'm going to introduce our next video, and the reason I'm introducing our next video is because it is a video that contains some horrendous photographs of me, but some amazing photographs of lots of our lovely young people. So, this year was our 6th year that we went away on our residential. I cannot believe we've done 6, and that all the people who've been on them are still here and have survived. But anyway, we have, and so this year was no different. We went, and it was great. And Danny, as usual, has made a fantastic video, which we're going to show you. But I just wanted to quickly introduce the video, because Danny makes this video every year, and so he gets the choice of what photographs go into it, which is why every year there are some horrendous photographs of me. As you'll see. I mean, there's often nice stories behind them, but they're still awful. I don't take a good, random shot. I need to be prepared. But there's often not very awful ones of Danny in there, I've noticed. They're all very lovely. So I wanted to mention a few things that happened while we were away that perhaps haven't made the cut, because either we didn't have a camera, or because Danny has left them out, or we didn't have photographs, or whatever. So first day we went to Whitby, and there was a couple of things that come to mind when I think about our trip to Whitby. One of them was Panda's epic fall. Where is Panda? Can you give us a wave? We have now named one of the streets in Whitby as Panda's Landing, because the fall was that epic and that impressive. It was on the Richter scale somewhere, and none of us noticed until we turned around and she was on the floor. We stopped traffic, pedestrian, and probably other traffic as well, by sitting on the floor for half an hour. It was quite an impressive thing, and it all got turned around because Noah did a dance with a plastic crab. So, that won the day. The other thing things that come to mind when I think about our trip to Whitby was Caleb getting attacked by a giant seagull. Me and Tim defying the rules in the pay-as-you-go toilet thing and skipping through. And then Tim announced halfway through the day that he was too cool for time. So if you know Tim and you work with him in a team and he's late or he's early, don't worry. It's just because he is too cool for time. He just turns up when he wants to turn up. He's just that cool. Second day, we had a very fun day in Dalby Forest doing lots and lots of games. Lots of fun stuff. Mick and organised some stuff. Thankfully, this year, we didn't get a complaint from the Forestry Commission that we got last year, which was because Charmaine didn't bring her horrendously scary Santa Claus mask, which she chased members of the public with last year. So this year she didn't. She just wore all of her clothes backwards. So it was fine. She just looked strange. But we had a great time doing that. And I think our Capture the Flag game was enjoyed more by the team than it was by the young people, if I'm honest. And poor Tabby nearly lost her face at one point with Joe Devonport leaping over the picnic bench. And then that evening, the thing that rounds up the day for me is Jack electrocuting his friend Elliot, who you'll see on the film. Halfway through the evening, we produced these laser guns that Dave Craven had lent us, and in true Dave Craven style, they were not just laser guns. They gave you a quite impressive electric shock when you got shot. And we put them on Jack and Elliot, and Jack shot Elliot, and he got the full voltage electric shock. But he didn't pull his punches because he shocked Jack back, and he got as good as he got. So that was quite an enjoyable evening. And then that evening, the first evening, all the young people went to bed without any issues. And now we gave them the freedom. So this is a good lesson in freedom. We said, you go to bed whenever you want. And by 12 o'clock, they were all in bed and asleep. So night number 2, I was overly optimistic, I think, that freedom always wins, because it didn't on night 2. And I know. I went to bed, and I think very, very optimistic that they would all go to bed and the rest of the team would be fine. And about midnight, I got woken up by all this screaming. So I climbed out of bed to see Mick was fast asleep on the other side. Danny was fast asleep underneath. So I climbed down the ladders and went out to find out what was going on, to see a plastic dinosaur fly across from the toilets. Thank you, Lewis. Nearly hit me in the face. So we had a good discussion about going into our own bedrooms, and all was very well. Tim took the baton and decided he was going to sit in the corridor. I went back to sleep, and an hour and a half later was woken up again by screaming in the corridor, and I was thinking, Tim must really have his hands full here. The young people must all be out of bed, all in the corridors. Went outside to find that it was Charmaine and Caleb arguing about a game of Cluedo that they'd been having, waking the whole place up. So in the end, we gave them the baton to sit out in the corridor for the rest of the night, and they did a great job because nobody else got up, because they were the ones causing the issues. But all was well. And then we had our final day, which was a lovely day. And normally I spend most of my 3 days trying to encourage young people not to do anything that is dangerous or involves strangers or large machinery or anything that might cause them some bother. And on this occasion, it was Danny that did all of those, all of the above. He went to go and find a Frisbee, climbed on top of a barn roof where there was a load of asbestos, got a lift down from the roof using one of those pallet lifts, I think, by the farmer who he'd never met before. So he rode down on a pallet lift to get off the roof. So Danny committed all the disastrous things. But luckily it was him, and we have to leave him to get on with it. And none of that is evidence in this video, I'll have you know. He's kept all of that out, so he's not in trouble with Amy. So there you go, Amy. That's what he did on his last day. So we had a fantastic day. It was brilliant. It absolutely chucked it down on the last day, and we all got wet through, but it was thoroughly enjoyable. And we're hoping there'll be another one next year. But I just want to quickly take this opportunity to say thank you to all the team who have served Urban Rev over the last year. Well, probably the last 11 years, but definitely the last year, because you guys have done a great job. And a lot of you have done it without me, because I've been on maternity leave. And you've done a fantastic job. You've kept it all going, and it's been brilliant. And at the end of this clip, there is a particular ode and thanks to one particular member of our team who has served faithfully for many, many years. So I hope you enjoy it as much as we did on the evening itself. So enjoy the film.
Well, thanks for being here on this bank holiday weekend. Send blessings to all those who'll be catching up who can't be with us personally tonight. Sorry I couldn't give you some better weather, but there you go. I do my best. Can I just say as well, I was just reflecting down there that in a situation like Jean's grandson Simon, very often the person going through the situation is much more personally equipped and stronger than those who are affected by the situation. And sometimes the forgotten group can be those who are around it: Simon's wife, his kids, and of course, grandma, mum and dad, people in the church. And the wonderful thing is that it's a strange thing really, but often in the process of suffering, you become conscious that the person suffering has discovered a depth of grace to which they have access that sometimes the people around the person are not necessarily tapped into that same grace. Corrie ten Boom, the old Dutch Jew who was put in Auschwitz with a sister and a father, and of course they subsequently died, once asked the father, "How do you face this?" And the father says, "You don't need the ticket for the train journey until you get on the train." So very often those on the train have a grace. So we just pray for the family, for the parents, for the kids, for wife, for Jean, for the church, for all the associated, that same grace will permeate onto all of you at this time, and that the very, very present help in time of trouble will be manifest and experienced, what the Bible talks about, the peace that passes understanding. So we send that to you today and send that down to Rugby. Now, I don't overburden things tonight. With a lot of team away, we've not done our normal format for the last 2 weeks, so I've got to speak a little longer. Some prefer it, so we want to keep everybody, kind of as content as possible. Also, thanks for those who stepped in. You know, Connor's here with his little baby and steps in, and very appreciative of that. But if I was going to title this week, remember last week we talked about the violence of God, and we followed up a little bit that helps to deal with some of the process of thought on that last Wednesday night, when we talked about going beyond Jesus, which is about understanding the Christ. And if you haven't listened to it yet online, and there's a lot of people, you know, we're in the hundreds, listen to it. If you haven't, please do. I think it will help you, and I think it's part of... We were saying on Wednesday that having done a lot of deconstructing as a house and changed from rock to Q, still very much on that journey, that the answer to deconstruction is not reconstruction, because if you reconstruct, you simply build a structure, another structure, which is rigid and solid. The answer to deconstruction is not reconstruction, it's repurposing. And so I've set myself, and we're setting ourselves, to repurpose the house as we've made this journey of deconstruction to become who we're supposed to be. Now, of course, within that, if I was going to title my little talk tonight, and there were two things that I felt I need to say. So if it's a bit messy, forgive me, but I want to say the two things that I feel I need to say. I would call it to question or not to question. That is the question. I have become, and am very aware, that questioning anything is for many people the most uncomfortable place to be in the world, and that the last place that most people expect to have anything questioned is in a community of people that we would call the church, because the essence is it's a bit like the story of Moses and God and the commandments and the mountain burning with fire. Moses, you talk to God and then you tell us what God says, and we're cool with that. But don't have us involved in that process. And one of the reasons is because questions invariably make us have to wonder whether what we think is the answer is actually the answer, or whether the answer that we think we have is complete as it should be, and whether it is reality or whether it's fantasy that we're following. So to question or not to question, that is the question. Now, Albert Einstein made a great quote. I was going to say during his lifetime. Well, you know, duh. Who knows? Maybe after it, I don't know. Einstein said two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity. And I'm not sure about the universe. That was Einstein. He had both a high and low regard of our human willingness to deal with the issues that really matter, and how we seem to have, unfortunately, an infinite stupidity. Now, one of the things that made me wrestle with this, and again, I'll try not to go too long, we'll cut and paste as we need to. I found myself asking myself, are we answering questions that no one is asking? One of the things that I grew up with in the evangelical Christian world, and trying to emerge into what we needed to be, as opposed to just a change of style. Because, you know, you can look as though things are different if you change the style, when actually it's business as usual. It's still what you were always doing. No change is really taking place. So I was driven back many years ago with the whole thing of, you know, most of the time the church is answering questions that nobody's asking. And I really bought into that, because I thought, yeah, that's true. We're often, you know, we're doing the internal tribal stuff, and not really thinking, how does the world function? How do people in general, how do they think? But then we come to our transition, and then we come to our deconstruction, and then we come to the emergence of our journey to become Q, which is all about, a journey. It's all about a quest. It's all about a question. But then I realized that we have to ask ourselves still the question, are we answering questions that no one is asking? And some of you would say, yep, because I've never asked a tenth of the questions that you're wrestling with. However, I would say this, that sometimes we need to have introduced to us the questions that we should be asking that we would not think about if nobody helped us to realize that that was a question. The process of education is more successful when it stimulates the question in the child as opposed to give the answer to the child. If you give the answer to the child, they may be very good at passing an exam, but you will educate them beyond their intelligence. Because when it comes to the reality of life and the principles that are associated with what it was you were trying to teach them, if you have not stirred in them the question and you've only given them the answer, it means that then when they find situations that are not the same as the situation that the question asked for the answer, they can't deal with the question because they never were taught how to wrestle with the question and what is a question and why is a question important. I believe we should all be walking around with a big question mark above our heads. I think one of the great problems of any established religion, of which I would put Christianity amongst it, is that it has spent most of its time trying to eradicate the questions, and therefore what we do is we turn people into being religious rather than relational, because relationships have questions. Relationships are organic, they're not mechanical. Jesus talked to this group called the Pharisees. My paraphrase, he basically said, your problem is you think you've got all the answers. And then when you see the questions, you reject the question. You see, I was also raised, how many of you were raised like me? Jesus is the answer. You will never hear me preach that now. What I will preach to you is Jesus is the question. Because whatever Jesus is the question, he is drawing us in life to go somewhere. Whatever Jesus is the answer, you just stopped wherever that answer was. And Jesus never said, here's the answer, worship me. Jesus said, I am the way, follow me. So he's saying, I'm the question. If you follow me, the question that is life, meaning, purpose, future will always be there, but while you follow me, the way, the truth, the life, you will be able to come to the things that actually bring way and bring truth and bring life to you. I have sat with many, many people in my over 35 years of ministry who said these words, why didn't you tell me this would happen? That's quite frustrating when you hear those words, because you realize that in communication and in teaching and in preaching and in sharing, you've actually been expressing that this would happen for a long period of time. But you see, because there was never a question, there was never an ability to grasp the answer that would prevent you at some point from saying, why didn't you tell me that this would happen? See, I'm no longer trying to fix your past. I am trying to equip your future. And in equipping your future, it means that when we arrive, we never have to say, why didn't you tell me this would happen? Because we are equipped and we are ready and we're facing it, and something begins to flow out of us because we've received that. Now, I also want to say that what I want you to receive goes beyond just human education, human natural teaching. I've seen many things in the unseen realm which can't be explained by human reasoning, and I don't know why I got onto this, but I felt I had to talk just a few minutes about this tonight. Things like when I wasn't even a teenager, I was just in my noughts. And I remember in our home that then was over on the Grove side of the city, My mother's aunt walked round the corner. I saw her in front of the mirror, and I knew instantly that she had come to tell us that my mother's brother had died suddenly, Uncle Sidney. Now, I can't have been more than 10 years old maximum, but I knew as she passed that window what she was coming to say before she ever said it, and no way of knowing as a boy, because I wasn't in a conversation of what that would be. Where does that come from? I'm trying to tell you that the dimension we're talking about is still a dimension of unseen and a dimension of spirit that touches the seen. So when we ask questions, it's not so that we can disassociate ourselves with the mystery and the unseen. It's actually so that we can better associate ourselves with that. Sometimes that word has come as a preparation. I remember one time being in our house when we lived across in Mogate in Acomb. And I said to Chris that there was a guy who was part of the church for a while. His name was Stephen Redman, who was in a church at that time across in Goole. And I said to Chris, I said, Steve Redman's on his way, and he's coming tonight, and he's going to ask if it's okay if he comes and joins the church. About 30 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Who do you think it was? It was Steve Redman. Why had he come? To ask the very question that I knew before he ever came to the door with no warning. There was nothing to say, I will be coming. It was totally out of the blue. Sometimes it has come as preparation. Sometimes it's come as warning. I'll give you a brief part of this story. I'm sat on a plane in Denver. In a storm, we can't get off. I fall asleep. I have a dream. In the dream, Connie is in the bed next to me, and she stops breathing. And in the dream, I have to do CPR on Connie because she stopped dreaming. Connie was just a young girl. And so the storm stops. We go in the hotel. 2 o'clock in the morning, guess what happens? I wake bolt upright, look over to Connie, who's in the bed next to us, and Connie's stopped breathing. We have to clear her airway. We have to give her mouth-to-mouth, and we have to call out the medics. See, some of those words were warnings. Now, some were also revealing. I was in a meeting in Chicago, on the airport in Chicago, and while I'm sat in the meeting, I'm suddenly not in the meeting, but I'm in York, and I'm in a car. And I'm in the back seat of the car watching a certain person in the front seat of the car who's with a person that person shouldn't have been with in that car, that had been a secret, but I was in the car, and I could describe every single detail of what happened. So when I called the guys back here, I said, I need you to check something for me. What I had been told as revealing to help that situation was totally accurate. So how could I be in Chicago and how could I be sat in a car in Dringhouses at the same time? I don't know. This is the mystery of the goodness of God, and also why I want to release you from the rigidity of just this, kind of fixed thing, okay? So that was revealing. Sometimes it's directional. We've been led many, many places. Our recent involvement in Salt Lake City and all of that. Won't bore you with the stuff. But I said all that to say that I have learned to trust what I see and what I receive. When it comes without any prior knowledge, when it comes not because it has been inspired by a situation or a circumstance or somebody has provoked it, but when it comes from nowhere like that, I think the sensible thing to do, not being stupid, like Albert Einstein said, I think the sensible thing to do is say, we probably ought to take this seriously. Would you agree? So one of the ones I wanted to share, because let me also say that these things are always helpful, but sometimes extremely uncomfortable, because sometimes I know stuff that I don't want to know. So let me share one detail and then explain why, and then give you this very quick little story. So some of you are familiar with this story, some of you aren't, so I need to share it. So I'm asleep on a Saturday morning. This is over 16 years ago. I'm asleep on a Saturday morning, and in my dream, I'm with my daughter Connie, and we walk out of a side street. And as we walk out of the side street and look ahead of us, there is this weird, strange, crazy-looking building that is Gothic in design, but looks like something between Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. It's just extremely unusual, and it has these towers going up into the air. Now, again, memory dims over time, and I can't remember, how many towers exactly did you see? I don't know. I saw at least the 4 that were on the frontage that we were walking towards. And as I saw this, Connie and I went inside the building through the door, and what struck me was that as we looked up, there was no roof. You could see all the way up to the sky. There was no roof in the building. And as I looked, I could see that this was a very unusual building. Now, this is the short version of the story. What I did notice is that it was multifaceted. You understand that? It had different faces. So all the different frontages were different. It was unconventional. It was an unfinished work in progress. It was open to the heavens, not closed in at all. And it was an unfolding revelation which makes each stone part of a bigger picture. So that building, then, here's the bit of this. I had no idea. This is in a dream. I have no idea what I'm looking at, just that it's weird. So I get up, I go in the kitchen, I put the coffee on, I put the TV on. And lo and behold, as I look at the TV, I'm now looking at the very building that I have just seen and been in my dream just an hour before. And suddenly I hear, this is La Sagrada Familia. That's the English version. If you want the Spanish version, then talk to Ruth. And she'll give you all the bits, the Sagrada. So this building existed, and it was like I've been there. I was there, and I looked. And I found that what it was, I saw the very towers you can see, which are crossed between Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, weird, Gothic. And Connie and I were walking down this thoroughfare, went into the building, and of course, then they showed at that point in time, there was no roof. The building was completely open inside. None of the internal roof structure had been put in place, and you could see right out to the heavens. So you say, well, what was the issue of that? Well, the issue was I was seeing something about which I must become responsible. Because as a leader, as a church leader, as a pastor, as somebody trying to listen to what's supposed to happen in the context of the expression of my life, I was seeing something that I did not know existed, but now was a picture and an image of something that I must accept because it came from somewhere other than my mind, or a book that I had read, or a program that I had seen. And what it was telling me is that whatever it was we were involved with would be multifaceted. That each face of this thing and each phase of this thing would not be like the other. So for those of you who think, why isn't this like the rock and why wasn't the rock like whatever? Because it's a multi-phased, a multifaceted thing of which now the architect who was behind the building of this, Antoni Gaudi, he had a hatred. Do you want to know what Gaudi hated? Straight lines. So when you go into Gaudi's cathedral, it's difficult to find a straight line anywhere because in Gaudi's mind, the universe and the human body is lacking of something, and that something is a straight line. Do you know there's no straight lines in your body? You haven't got a bone. You think your bones are straight, but they're not. It's even interesting that the only thing really that we understand to go in straight lines is light. But we now understand that when light passes an object like a planet that has a gravitational pull, light of its own design will bend. So the light, rather than going, so even light itself bends to the situation. Now think about that in the context of Jesus, the light of the world. Think of the fact of him, rather than being a rigid straight line of rules and regulations, is this fluid, moving, bending, accommodating, wonderful, glorious, persona that says, I will fit into your life. And I used to think the gospel was about, we invite Jesus into our life. Stupid. Einstein got it right. See, the gospel is not we invite Jesus into our life. The gospel is he invites us into his. And in his world, in his life, in his light, there is this wonderful place where our humanity somehow fits. And in that love, we begin to be shaped in the same way that he is. Now, the law, the old law, was straight line theology, and it changed nothing, and it changed nobody. So along comes God in the form of Jesus to say, do you understand you can't live straight lines? So Gaudi, he builds a building that's all these beautiful curves and shapes and movements. Why? Because I believe, and I'm sharing with you, that we are building another face on the cathedral that is the design that we were called to actually build. It's multifaceted, it's unconventional, it's an unfinished work in process. And I believe, here's what I believe. When they finally put a roof in this building, they will have missed the point. Because once they complete it, they will have said, what we are building can be completed. It's not an ongoing story. I love the fact that, in the Bible, the book of Luke and the book of Acts are purported to have been written by a guy called Luke, who was supposedly a medical doctor, and I have no reason to doubt that. I think the evidence is quite good. But actually, we are told that Luke and Acts should be read as one book. That Acts is the continuation of Luke. And when you take Luke and Acts, you have the biggest portion of the New Testament in terms of the longest of books. But the interesting thing about the book of Acts of the Apostles, which was the emerging development of this thing that came out of the Christ, has no end. No end. So where the letters of Paul finish with thanks and goodbye, my summary, and all the other books, the Acts of the Apostles does not finish at its last chapter. Why? Because it was never supposed to finish, because it was supposed to be a building that has no roof on it. It's always open to the heavens, but with all the facades giving an expression of the story, so that every stone that is included in the facade is just part of a bigger story. And if you're looking for the bigger story, instead of being so darn self-centered, you'll see where you fit and why this is important. 2 million people a year want to see this in Barcelona. Why? Because it says something to them. This is not just a building to people. You watch people who visit La Sagrada Familia, and they are not just seeing a building. Something happens inside of them because they are witnessing a confession, a declaration, a truth that's drawing them into something to say, look at this. This is the story. This is the curve. This is the space that is made to show the fullness of the wonder of the one who we will see if we stay in the place of the question. Now, I have to say, and I need another 5 minutes just to do this. This dream that I had came at a time of pending disaster and great distress. So it was not born of a time of me thinking I'm God's gift to the world. It was born at a time of thinking, why would the world ever need me? This is all a complete mess. How could God love me? What a failure. But that's the thing about grace. Grace shows up best when it encounters brokenness, because in our brokenness is when we realize we actually need grace. And the truth is, many of us have not seen brokenness enough to understand grace enough. Now, I don't wish brokenness on anybody. I don't wish disaster on anybody. But I will tell you something. Those who've had the greatest disasters are the ones who best understand the work of grace. I used to admit that I was a sinner, which I was, But, sin to me was like using a bad word accidentally, or, parking in the disabled parking spot at Asda. Oh, Lord, forgive me for the sins of... Now, I know you think that's stupid, but what I'm trying to point out is most of us Christians who talk about being sinners actually can't point to much else other than that, and so there's been none of this desperation that screams out and says, I need grace or it's over. Well, this is the position I was in at that time. Gaudi disliked straight lines, and so have I from that moment. And if we try to impose straight line thinking on our view of the world, we get into all kinds of difficulty. So, this was the revelation. Just give me 5 more minutes, if you will. It's not hurting. Genesis chapter 9, in that brokenness, I saw this, and this is part of the shape of who we are. It says, the sons of Noah, it's in Genesis chapter 9, verse 18, the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the 3 sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the earth. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard, and when he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered, naked inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, the oldest son, saw his father's nakedness and immediately posted it along with pictures on Facebook. But Shem, Ham, and Japheth tried to take it down. Now, put it in those terms, because when you look at historic terms, you think, naught to do with me. The problem is, when you've not encountered the fullness of grace, we are too ready to look at the failings of another, and our immediate desire is to point that out and to shame them. Now, I think honesty is wonderful, but honesty is a dangerous thing when all it means that you are allowed to be honest about someone else, but they're not allowed to be honest about you. Throughout my ministry, I've heard people say, well, shouldn't we just be able to say what we mean? Shouldn't we just be able to say what we think? Yeah, you should, and I encourage it. But then don't get upset when somebody else says what they think back to you. The maturity says, yes, we should, but it shouldn't be this way. So again, this is the 2-sentence version of this, because we haven't got time to deal with it any further. But basically what was happening is Noah has got drunk, and he's totally blotto, and he's naked inside his tent with all his bits hanging out. Now, I have a question, and then I'm going to tell you something about the culture of this house. Who's ever thought for 1 minute about the impact on Noah of seeing all the world that he knew drown, be floating around the boat that he was in, white and bloated, bumping against the hull, while lucky for him, he and his family were inside. Now you can say, yeah, but he preached the gospel and his family came in and wonderful. But you think it had no impact upon Noah, what he experienced? I think I'd be in my tent getting drunk. And here's the problem. Using it as an analogy, when people are in the tent getting drunk with their bits hanging out, there's usually a very good reason that does not need some smart aleck like Ham saying, oh, I can't believe you've done that. I can't believe you would expose that. I can't believe you behaved that way. That's really not appropriate. And then wanting to post it to the world. You know what the Bible says about that? It says a curse came on Ham. I haven't got time to talk about that, whatever you make about it, but a curse comes on that behavior. But the other 2 sons, Shem and Japheth, and I have to finish for time, this just absolutely impacted my life at a time of personal shame, at a time of disappointment, at a time when I was being accused and condemned, was that these other 2 young sons, knowing the situation, they took a sheet, they took a blanket, and the 2 of them held it together, and they said, let's do this together, and they walked backwards into the tent, never looking on the nakedness of Noah. Now, you might say, what's the big deal? Well, in those days, it was a big deal. It meant something. It meant that you were shamed, that you were exposed, you were vulnerable, and you were at risk of being disgraced. They went in backwards, and as they got to where their father was, they laid the sheet over him and walked out of the tent, so that when Noah came around, somebody had graced his life, not by posting his exposed failures all over Facebook, but by covering his weaknesses, his potential sense of shame, his brokenness, so that Noah inside his tent could experience a love that might give him the hope and the chance to wrap that blanket around him and say, I'm actually loved. I'm actually cared for. Somebody graced me in my weakness. Somebody graced me in my failure. This house is not a ham house, much as I love ham, and I wish ham had been part of the Shem and Japheth, because a bacon sandwich you cannot beat. But we'll settle for Shem and Japheth. It's a Shem and Japheth house. It's a partnership of brothers, of sisters, of people who say, we don't look at people's failings because God doesn't look at them. What we do is we always come at them backwards because we don't want to know. All we want to know is they've covered and they've got time to heal and they've got space. And in that place of grace is where you find wholeness and healing, and you find the courage to come out of the tent instead of committing suicide in the tent. And when we heap things on people, or we fail to consider their story and what brought them to this place, we can heap condemnation on them that whether physically or spiritually or emotionally, they can commit suicide, cut themselves off, be finished with that life. But grace does something different. Grace says, okay, we're going to give you some time. You're covered. It's okay. We haven't even seen what it is. We don't recognize it. We don't talk about it. That's not what we're here to deal with. We want to see you pop your head out of the tent when you get sober and say, hi. And then like Jesus, on the day of his resurrection, after his resurrection, we'll have the little fire on, we'll have the fish, and we'll be cooking breakfast and say, come join us. Because you see, Jesus didn't expose Peter's shame as a betrayer. Instead, Peter didn't say, why did you fail me? Why did you fail me? Why did you fail me? He said, do you love me, Pete? Do you still love me? Do you really love me? Come and have some breakfast. He's one of us. He's part of us. So the reason I said that is, you might not think this is unconventional, but I propose to you it is. Because what I found happened to me in my failure was I was not covered, I was exposed, I was not forgiven, I was condemned, and I swore we would never be like that in this place. The roof is off, there is no ceiling, we walk backwards to every situation, we cover everything, because grace said when your face comes through the tent curtain and says hi, we're there to say hi. Welcome to the family. This is the culture of the kingdom of grace that I trust and believe we've been led to, and I want us to share together. Father, help us to be faithful to what it is you have shown us, so that the world around us can feel the impact of the kindness and the grace that you so wish to reveal through us. Help us to be ultra compassionate to the story of everyone that we meet, knowing that who they are and what they have done is a result of that story. But help them to come to the place, and help us to come to a place that we don't believe the story that we have concocted about ourselves, but we believe your story about us, which is good news to the world. So help us to receive it, believe it, live in it, walk in it, and let this house be a Sagrada Familia, a sacred family to the honor of your name. Amen. Thank you. You've been wonderful. And they're going to do something and then grab a coffee.
Straight bullet and a mama cries, baby won't be coming home tonight. sirens screaming down the avenue. Just another story on the evening news. Politics and prejudice, how the hell it ever come to this? Everybody's gotta pick a side. It don't matter if you're wrong or right, no. So it goes. And I hold on to hope and I won't let go. 'Cause I believe you and me are sisters and brothers, and I believe we're made to be here for each other. We never thought we'd walk hand in hand. The world has just broken together again. 'Cause I believe in the end, love wins. Sometimes